Hello everybody, in this project we are going to get an introduction to Unity and take a look at the game engine that we'll be using for this class. Now we'll be using Unity. Unity is a very popular game engine, and we'll use that to complete all the projects in this class. So if you haven't done so already, make sure that you go to unity3d.com, get Unity, and download the personal version of Unity. At the time of this presentation, the current version is 5.1.3. Make sure that you meet the minimum system requirements to run Unity, and if not, you're going to need to find an alternative solution to run Unity if it doesn't run on your computer. But any modern computer should handle Unity without too much trouble. Now, once you download and install Unity, I've launched Unity, and this is the Unity landing page. So the goal of this presentation is really just to kind of get you acclimated to Unity and walk through some of the basic conventions. So when you launch Unity for the first time, it's going to ask you to activate your license. Now make sure that you activate the personal version of the license. That's the free version of the software that we'll use for this semester. If you inadvertently activate the pro version of the software, that's okay. That'll give you a 30-day demo of the pro version, and you can revert the license as needed. But I'll be using the personal version as well. So I've launched Unity, and the first time you launch Unity, or every time you launch Unity, actually, it takes you to this, this project page. Now the project page, I currently have no projects in Unity, and so really my only option is to create a new project. And so I'm going to walk you through the process of creating our first project. Now this project is going to be an experiment. It's our first assignment, and I'll refer to it as the Gravity Lab. Now I want to walk you through the process of creating a new project, and that'll take us to the Unity interface. And then we'll do a quick orientation to the application. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to create a new project. Now, when we create a new project, we want to give our project an appropriate name. Now, this project name is going to show up as a folder in the location that we determine. And I'm going to call this simply Gravity Lab, or I could just call it Gravity. Now, I've named my project, but the next thing that I want to do is set the location. Now, for the sake of this demo, I'm going to set the location of the project to my desktop, okay? And I can do that by clicking on the ellipse here at the end of the location field, and that will take me to browse for a location. Maybe it'll take me to browse for a location. So once this decides to pop up, I'll set the desktop as my destination. There we go. I have an external hard drive connected, and I think my hard drive's a little sleepy, so it took a little while for it to wake up. I'm going to set the destination to my desktop, and I'll hit choose. And now you can see that I have my project title here, and the location is going to my desktop. Now, by default, we're creating a 3D project. We'll talk about 2D projects much later in this semester. But for now, just notice that the default project is set to 3D. I'm not concerned about my asset packages at this point. We'll talk about those later, but I'm going to hit Create Project. Now, when I hit Create Project, Unity is going to go through the process of building a project folder for my project. And it's going to create that project folder for now on my desktop. And we'll talk about more appropriate ways to stay organized. But for now, I want to build this project to my desktop. So I'll create project, and you can see that Unity goes through the process of creating that project on the desktop. Now this project folder, this is the thing that contains all of the assets and all of the resources that we're going to use for our first project. Now we can add resources to it, but if I want to back up this project, or if I want to take it to another location to work on it, or maybe I want to put it in Dropbox and work on it from another computer, we want to make sure that we transfer this whole project folder, okay? I'm just going to double click and take a look at the contents of this project folder, because you can see that inside this project folder we have assets, library, project settings, and some other things. Now Unity needs all of these assets in order to be able to edit, modify, or create our game. We as designers are most interested in the contents of the assets folder, and more about that later. But the takeaway from this is when you create your project, the project folder, you'll need to back up that entire project folder in order to have all of the assets for your game project. More about that later. For now, what I want to do is I want to take a look at the Unity interface. So I'm just going to make this window a little bit bigger, and I'll give you a brief tour of the Unity interface. Now, Unity is a 3D game engine, and in fact, we can make 2D and 3D games with Unity. And we'll talk about the difference between a 2D and a 3D game a little bit later, but for now, just know that we're looking through the primary window is our scene view, and this is a 3D interface to our environment. So we're dealing with a X, Y, and Z axes. And just like in 3D modeling applications, if you've used those before, or other applications that have more than 2 dimensions, we have our Y-axis, which is running up and down. That's our vertical axis. We have our Z-axis, which is running back in space. And then we have our X-axis, which is running left and right. Now, this is the scene view, and this is where really we're going to compose our game. And right now, there's nothing inside of our scene view. And we'll create something here shortly. But on the left side of this window, we have our hierarchy view. And our hierarchy view gives us a list of all of the assets that are currently in our scene. So right now, I have a main camera, and you can see I can select the main camera. Once I select the main camera from the hierarchy view, it shows me where that camera is in the scene. It also gives me this little widget that pops up that's this axis tool that allows me to move the camera around the scene. In addition to that, I have a directional light, and you can see it's got this little icon of a sunshine, and it also has different axes. So whatever is inside our hierarchy, whatever is listed here on the left side, that is the contents of our active scene. Now below the hierarchy window, we have our project. Our project tab, we have an assets folder, and for now our assets folder is completely empty. But as we import packages that we might want to use, or as we create assets, so maybe we create a graphic inside Photoshop and we want to use that in our game, we would import that into our assets folder, and then it would show us the contents here in the contents of the assets folder. Now I do want to point out that our assets folder is currently empty, and our assets folder is linked to our project folder. In fact, if we go back to our project folder for a moment and we look inside our project folder, you can see that we have an assets folder. The contents of this asset folder is the equivalent of the content of this assets folder through Unity. We're just looking at it through the Unity interface. So if I were to select my asset folder, it's showing me the contents to the right, and I currently have no content, but if I right click in here and say create folder, I'll just create a simple test folder and I'll name it test, and now you can see that I now have a folder inside my assets folder. So typically we would create folders for things like if we want to make materials or textures, or maybe we make some 3D models, or maybe we want to have a sounds folder and we import all of our sounds into those folders. So this is the way that we're going to stay organized inside of our project. When I created this folder, I want to point out that inside my project folder, inside my assets folder, I now have the same test folder. So I just wanted to take a minute to illustrate the point that this asset folder, whenever we create content directly in Unity, what we're really doing is placing content inside of our project folder. Okay, so we have our scene view. This is our 3D view to our game. We have our hierarchy, and all the contents of the hierarchy is what's active in our game scene. We have our project folder, which contains all of our assets for our project, and then we have our inspector over here on the right side. Our inspector component, our inspector panel, gives us options and variables for any content that we have selected. So for example, if I select the directional light, you can see that not only is it highlighted in the scene, but the inspector then becomes populated with properties that govern that type of object. So we have our directional light selected, and I can see up here at the top of the inspector, it says here's our directional light. Okay. We have a transform component, and the transform component gives us information about the position, scale, and rotation of the object in our 3D space. In addition to that, we have a light component, and the light component governs all the parameters of the actual light object. So we can do things like change the color of the light. So if I click on that swatch, I can shift the color to a different color. and then I can address all of these other options over here. Okay, so that's just a really high-level overview of the Unity interface. And in the next presentation, what we'll do is we'll create some content. We'll talk about navigating this interface in our 3D view, and we'll start to create some meaningful content. But we'll catch up and we'll do that in the next presentation.